I learned how to ride the Jeepney when I was in third grade. And I remember it was just very scary because I didn't really know what to do. And there's no maps. We don't have maps at home that we can look at to say, oh, these are the routes. You know how here in the States, the buses have like routes and there's pictures and you can know, oh, that's my next stop. Over there, there's none like that.
We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers, stronger than ever. Never say never. Don't look back now. Don't look back now.
Oh, I also have one more thing about Meg, just to add. So Meg and I used to be enemies, or
it's a wrap. Woo!
We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers.
In this episode, we're going to discuss a lot of our experiences when we were younger when it came to transportation. So here in America, we all pretty much drive our own cars. But back home, a lot of us did not have that luxury, for one, or some of us did not have that luxury. But others were very fortunate enough to have multiple cars within their household and having drivers as well. But the other thing is we all had to learn how to take public transportation. And back in the Philippines, if you aren't familiar, one of the best, or actually the most popular form of transportation is called the Jeepney. And so we're going to just open up a little discussion about what was everyone's either memorable moment and how they learned how to use the public transportation, or something that, or if they remember the first time they tried it, or maybe a failure that they want to share with us. Because I definitely know I have some stories to tell in terms of like failure of riding these public transportation. So I'm actually going to start with Kat. So Kat, tell us your first memory or something memorable about you learning how to navigate the public transportation.
My first memory was when I was in third grade. I learned how to ride the Jeepney when I was in third grade. And I remember it was just very scary because I didn't really know what to do. And there's no maps. We don't have maps at home that we can look at to say, oh, these are the routes. You know how here in the States, the buses have like routes and there's pictures and you can know, oh, that's my next stop. Over there, there's none like that. And sometimes too, the Jeepneys like reroute and then you don't know that they're rerouting, you know? And so it's just kind of scary, especially when you're a third grader.
Nice. Thanks for that. And I love that you have the actual Jeepney right there behind you. And for you guys listening to the podcast, you're going to have to watch the YouTube video to see the example if you've never seen a Jeepney before. But Kat is super right. If the Jeepney has, what do you say, Kat, is like an average amount of passengers on a Jeepney?
I feel like it's more than like 15, more than 18
16,
even. Yeah,
Yes.
just because I remember that each seat that where you're facing each other, it's 8 and 8, I think, right? Or something like that. So 8 and 8. And then there's people that are going to be on people's laps. So think about like maybe doubling that because you can sit on your parents' lap if you're a child, or even when you're not a child. I remember being like, an adult, like more like in my high school years, and you could still like sit on your friend's lap to kind of pack the Jeepney in. And then there's usually about 2 people in the front and the passenger seat in the front, and then the driver. And then there's usually people like on the steps as you go into the Jeepney, like at least, I don't know, 4 people that can stand and basically
hold on to the thing.
Hold on. And angkas, what is angkas again in English, Joy?
Joy said it was
piggyback. It's called
piggyback. And then people could also be on the roof. Like it's kind of crazy.
There's like no seat belts at all. So moving on to Joy. What about you, Joy? What was your experience, or what was your memorable moment about learning how to navigate the public transportation in Bacolod?
Growing up, tricycle was like my most memorable mode of transportation. It doesn't take you from point A to like a long distance travel. It actually just takes you from one place to like the supermarket or like to a friend's house, and it's super cheap. It's like $0.02 centavos. I mean, super cheap and so much fun. That's what I really enjoyed so much more and miss it actually.
Let's break down the word tricycad while we're at it. So it's tri because it has 3 wheels. So you can think of a bike. You know, a bicycle has 2 wheels, but there's a 3rd wheel on the other side because it has an attachment to it, which makes it a tri. And sikad means pedal. So, yeah, so that's why it's tricycad. So, yeah, tri-pedal. Tricycle.
I'm just to kind of point it out, the person who drives that tricycle is crazy strong. Just their calves and everything, because as Joy said, you know, they can pack it in. And so, yeah, I just can't even like imagine having to drive a tricycle with, you know, 6 people in it.
And usually they don't even look like they're really buff. They're like this skinny Filipinos that are just like, if you get in there, I'm like, can he handle us? Can he take us from point A to point B? I'm like, I'm scared for my life. You're sitting there, and then all of a sudden he's like, okay, come on. He's asking people to keep like packing the tricycle. And it's like, oh my God. And then he does it. He does his job. So it's just awesome.
And he packs it for the money, right? But
for the money, it's all about it.
So realistically, that attachment that they have on the bike, it can probably seat like decently 2 people. But then you can, if there's 2 adults and 2 kids, then the kids can sit on their lap. And then sometimes they get creative. And this is why I think like Filipinos are so resourceful, because then they redesign this attachment, and they add more seats on the back, and then they add more little attachment on the side so people can actually piggyback, like we said earlier, and then just hold on to something on the tricycle. So yeah, I love it. I do remember those days. And back home, Joy and I lived, what do you think, 3 miles away?
A tricycle mile away from each other. So,
yeah, so we would
double.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yes, totally. I know what you mean. So we're gonna move on to Pao. Pao, what about you? What was your experience or memorable moment in learning how to navigate the public transportation?
I think for me, it's more of, it's not my first time like riding. It's more of the experience and riding the jeepney. Because back in high school, we have a service. I'm pretty sure Kat and Meg are my service mates back in high school. So that experience every day, every time the driver picks us up, it's just, before going to school, it's just memorable. And then picking us up from school, also dropping us home. Those are the fun memories that I've experienced since first year high school till 4th year high school. So those 4 years are so memorable. Those stories, each and every day has different stories, different moods of our service mates. And sometimes there would be issues, that quarrels or fights and misunderstanding. But then those experiences are very memorable to me. I think that's the most important thing. Like that 4 years that I'm riding the jeepney together with my service mates, it's the best time, the best experience I ever had.
Love it. So you just mentioned that. Okay, so for the people who are listening who aren't familiar with what a service is, could you talk more about what that is? Pao?
Oh, it's more of like, like a taxi. If somebody's going to pick you up, you're going to call the taxi. You're going to ride on the taxi.
Like our personal Ubers?
Yeah, Ubers. But this one, instead of one person only riding the Uber, there's a lot of us. So probably there's, I think, 10 of us or 11 of us. So there's first route, they're going to pick up the one that's farthest, and then eventually to the ones closer to the school. So that's about it. I think so.
And that was a way for the drivers who own their jeepneys to make more money on a constant basis, because if they were just relying on public transportation, I mean, sometimes they don't have a lot of passengers, but if they have clients like us, we were all clients for some, like Joy and I were in the same service with Thick Boy. And so with that, they can charge the family. I think they were charging the family like 200 pesos a month or something.
360, 350 to 360 each person.
Yeah.
So example, my sisters with me and my brother, they charge also my sister and my brother.
Yeah, and they can't really pack it as much as a regular jeepney would because they have to make room for our bags, right? So
yeah.
So $350 is $7 US dollars a month.
So per month, yeah.
I wonder what it's like now. I'm sure inflation went up and everything.
Meg, you had something to say. I think I saw you raise your hand.
It's like school bus. It was kind of like
exactly.
a school bus.
Yep, it's the Philippine version of the American school bus or the Western school bus. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how, like, if you're the farthest away from school, you're the one who gets picked up first, and you're the one who has to wake up really early because you get picked up first. I remember I was getting picked up, I believe, at like 6:45 or something like that. And that's early, you know, for, I don't know what it is like over here in the States, but I know for me that was early. But it's just really fun. As Pao said, me, Pao, and Meg are all service mates. And I think the most fun part, especially like in the morning, we're kind of groggy, you know, but in the afternoon when we got picked up from school and we had so much energy, I just remember we would do crazy things in that service. Like we would you know, as we're driving, because again, it's an open air like transportation. It's basically the jeepney, right, that we talked about earlier. I remember that, you know, as we're passing through different neighborhoods, we would like cat call and name call like people like outside. We would just like do like fun things and you know, nothing like bad, but just like crazy stuff where like we would like sing or whatever it is to try to get other people's attention as we're driving through the neighborhoods, and it was just so fun.
Yeah, and I remember the cat calling part, and I feel like for on our end, it was like making people feel good. Like we passed by like people playing basketball. Woo, guapo, you know,
handsome.
Yeah, exactly. So Meg, you were a service mate for Pal and Kat, but what was your experience or other if there was any other memorable moments of you learning public transportation as a kid?
Actually, very memorable for me is that I learned how to ride the jeepney through Kat. Because
really?
remember I told you that one time that because we lived kind of like nearby, close. So when like going home, I would go with her and she would go until her neighborhood, and then after her neighborhood, I need to take the tricycle to my neighborhood. So going with Kat, I learned how to use the public transportation by myself, and then from then on, I rode the public transportation by myself, and I learned it from Kat. So,
oh my gosh, Meg, that's so crazy because I literally don't remember that. But now that you're bringing it up, I could remember now. That's so crazy. That's so awesome.
That's a great story right there. And so thanks guys for sharing your firsts. For me, I think the first time I had to learn, well, when I was younger, I would always go with my yaya to go to the market, to go to, you know, to the store or other places, or to go to my cousins, and we would always take public transportation because we didn't have a car. And so I didn't learn, but I think, you know, subconsciously I was, you know, at least getting familiar with how to take it, until one day I don't remember what grade. I could have been in fourth grade, maybe third grade. I was really young to a point where I shouldn't be taking public transportation by myself. I might have mentioned this back in our other episodes, but I used to take piano lessons after class. And of course, my service ride wouldn't wait for me after a certain amount of time because, the guy has to take everyone else home. And then he has to go to work. So he can't really wait. So I just remembered I always got left behind a couple of times. So until one day I had to learn how to go home. I think it's important that you knew at least like the barangay barangay that you live in, which for me was Tacoling. So like the little area. It's not really a city or anything, but it's a little area. So at least if you know where that is, I just have to remember to, when the jeepney stops, you just have to ask, is this going to Tacoling? Like I have no idea where these jeeps are going. So then he'll just say, well, if you ride this, the next stop, you can catch another one that will go to Tacoling, which is where I live. And then I remember I didn't have any money on me, not enough to ride 3, I think, jeepneys. And so I only had money for the first one. And I think I only had money for the second one too. But on the third transfer, I just had to sit at the very back, not get noticed, and hopefully no one
you're not there.
and pretend like I'm not. If I can't see anyone, no one can see. But I had no money left. But we had no credit cards. I had no one to ask. So I just, luckily it worked out for me. And, you just kind of I just remember having to, so when it's your stop, or actually there's no stops for
There's no
jeepney.
stop. No.
There's no stops. But if it's my area for me to stop, you just have to knock on the roof. So or you have to scream, oh, stop right here or something like that.
Para.
I don't remember what I had to do. I think, and then I remember I was so young, so I was shy to be loud. So I think I might have just knocked. And then some jeepneys were very high tech, where they have a little doorbell. So they're they have the string in the back, and then you pull it. I mean, it's for the people, American people watching this. You're familiar with those, but that was not common at all. So then that was my first run-in into taking public transportations by myself. And luckily I got off scot-free, and no one called me out on not paying that last fare. And I think I remember it was $2.50. I really did not have coins, nothing. And so after that, I got a little bit more confident in riding it whenever I needed to. So, but that was stressful, because what happens if you get caught? What are they going to do? I have no idea.
I feel like there wasn't really a rule about it, right? I don't even remember that there's really a law about it.
I feel like they're just gonna give you the stare.
Right.
They're just gonna shame.
They're just gonna make you feel bad or something. But just talking about the fare, I think what's really cool is how the driver just has to remember who's when you jump into the Jeep, they have to kind of remember who just jumped in, did they pay, and whatnot. It's amazing how they have to remember. There's no system to monitor it other than the driver literally remembering who's in the Jeep and who hasn't paid. And remember, if it's more than 16 people, that's a lot of people to remember.
And I feel like it was based on just honesty.
Right, exactly. It was so based on honesty.
And so you're right. I don't know how the drivers remember that. And then Joy or Pao or Meg, if you want to talk about how did we pay? So here in America, you have a bus pass, or you get the way the transportation is set up is that you get on the bus and you typically run into the driver first. And everywhere, when even I travel in Europe, that's how it's set up. But in the jeepney, you actually go in from the back. The driver does not see you at all, unless you go into the driver's passenger side. So how do we, maybe Joy, talk about how we pay for our fare when we ride our transportation, our jeepneys back home?
I remember just having exact change. When you go to the jeepney and knowing how much it is. But if you don't have an exact change, your driver has this like the paper bill, it's wrapped around their fingers when they're driving. So it's like they have a little cashier machine on their finger. So when you pay, let's say the cost is like $2. I'm sorry, 2 pesos, right? And then you give them a whole $5 or 5 pesos bill, and then they would just know you pass it on from one person to another. So if you're on the last seat, you pass it on until the driver. And then the driver would be like, okay, I have the change. So he has the coin part, and then he has the bills on his finger. Then he would just remove all those changes and then, go pass it back to the people. And then people are just honest about it. It was how they pay. There's really no system. There's no credit card. Yeah, you're right. So it was like, Meg has something to say. Yeah, maybe you have more input on this.
There are also, like, from long distances, there were conductors in the back of the Jeep that they would take the fares from all the passengers, and they had the change with them instead of the driver taking in the fares.
But yeah, you're right. I remember that. So for all the people that are listening, yes, Jeepney was the like number one form of transportation for like medium distance. And then for shorter distance, we have the tricycle, which is either an actual bicycle or sometimes an actual motorcycle. Some people,
tricycle.
Tricycle. So then we also had buses. Don't get us wrong. We're not like super mountain people or anything, but we also had buses for people who wanted to travel, like, I think anything longer than an hour that might be considered long distance, right? Yeah. I'm not really sure, because I think back home we use kilometers? I don't know. Kilometers, yeah. So here we do, miles. So anyway, yeah, so we definitely had buses. There are bus companies, and in that form of transportation, then you do have to pay in advance, or you do have to meet the conductor, like Meg said. Speaking of traveling, let me hear about any of you guys' memories or experience on local traveling. Did you guys travel when you were younger? Does anyone want to take that on?
No, not for me. It's one of my biggest regrets is not being able to locally travel, and one is we don't really have a lot of like domestic flights from one island to another. We have 7,000 islands, so it's hard to like go from one place to another. And also, money. We don't have any money to travel.
It wasn't as accessible.
Exactly. It wasn't and then if you want to go from one island to another, and you take we would take boats. Remember from all of ferries, we would boat boats. But before the speedboats came along, it was this huge boat.
The barge.
It took us 2 hours. Now it just takes them 55 minutes. But when I was younger, we would ride on this big barges, boats, and it would take us 2 hours for like a supposedly short distance. So it wasn't accessible growing up. Although now I really want to do a lot of Philippine travel, but
totally. And I know that we did in high school. I know we did a couple of field trips. So if you guys remember that, I just want you to start remembering in your head, and I'm going to start kind of calling you out to tell us about your experience. I remember one field trip for sure, but I want to hear from Pao. Did you go on any of those field trips, and where was it?
When we travel, going to Iloilo for the whole entire class, batch, we would go there, go to the museums. We would ride during that time, it was high school, so it's a fast craft already. So it's like 45 minutes from Bacolod to Iloilo. And then we would go to all of those landmarks, and then museums, ancient houses, and then come back to Bacolod at the same day in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I think that's something I appreciate about us going to school, is because I think if we just relied on ourselves and our family, I don't know that we would have done anything cool like that. And I don't even know that we thought it was cool back then. Not as cool as taking a trip together, right? Because we're all a ham when we're together. But we weren't thinking of exploring and learning, right? But Meg, I saw your face light up earlier when I said field trips. What trips do you remember us taking in high school?
Yeah, I remember when we went to Iloilo. I remember that. And there, aside from field trips, I remember, I think it was in high school, that there would be like a fiesta in Kabangkalan. And yes, and some friends decided to go to Kabangkalan to go to that fiesta, Sinulog. And yeah, just like by land trip, a couple hours from Bacolod to Kabangkalan to enjoy the fiesta and like those festivities.
Local festivities.
Yeah. What about you, Kat? Traveling? Did you travel back then?
Yeah, it was in third grade. I remember that so vividly because we went to Tagaytay. It was like an Earth Summit or something like that. And I can't remember who I was with, but I know it was with a bunch of students. And I believe it was like, third grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and each grade had like a few representatives that got sent out. And it was like this leadership training at Earth Summit in Tagaytay. And I remember it vividly because that was the time that I actually had chest pain and I fainted while we were like in one of the one of the events. And then I went to the doctor and the doctor basically said, you're a third grader, you have a chest pain. It's because you're overloading yourself. You're stressed. You have way too many activities. So that was the start of me having way too many activities. I remember at third grade, I was trying to play volleyball. You know, I was doing dance. I was playing the piano. I was trying to sing. I was like doing all these crazy things. And the doctor basically said that you have to kind of choose what you want to do.
Wow. What kind of doctor was that? Was that?
You know, right? He was basically saying you can't do everything. So I'm
Quack quack.
okay.
Just kidding.
What's that, Joy?
I said Dr. Quack quack.
I know, right? Dr. Quack Quack. So I remember that. But also just to reiterate the Iloilo travel, that was one of my fun memories because just imagine a field trip, but we're like in a boat. I think we call it the Bullet at this point. I think it's called Bullet now because it's the faster version of the boat that takes us from Bacolod to Iloilo. And just like, again, I don't know what it's like here in the States because I didn't grow up here, but I'm sure that their field trips, they were in, buses, or maybe if they really go further, they would be in a plane. But for us, we were in a boat, like to go to a different island.
Fresh off the boats, guys.
Yes. It's just a different feel, very, very different feel and just so fun. For me, it's so much more fun. I don't know what it's like here, but again, just different. Yeah.
Yeah. The only field trip I remember, and I don't even remember a lot of it because I have, like Joy tells me, suppressed memories. I remember we went to Dumaguete because I just remember like very few vivid like memories. I don't know if this is, I remember going to Dumaguete. It was the first time I saw clear water in my life because what's the beach that we go to? Punta Taytay? That was not clear at all.
Oh, you know what? Punta Taytay is so nice now, from what I heard.
Really? Oh my goodness!
Because they put more like white sand now, I think.
Ooh.
Artificial? Artificial? Where did they get it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, that has to be something I visit because I just remember Punta Taytay was like the only beach close enough, to travel to. But Dumaguete was a trip where I'm like, oh my God, clear water. You can see what's underneath the water because Punta Taytay was just mud in front of you.
Murky.
Yeah. And then, but we played in it anyway. That was the beach that we had. And then there was another trip I remember we took, and I don't know if it's the same one. It could have been where we were in a sugar cane. And I have some pictures of that too. So, I mean, those trips. And then I think I remember another trip where it was like an all-day trip. We were on a bus and we went from city to city outside of Bacolod looking at churches and, just old churches and some
I think
landmarks.
I think we went to Silay or Talisay during that
Yeah,
time.
we did.
Yeah, I remember that. So those were fun times. I think those were the only times I mean, besides going to Manila with my parents or anything, going to Manila Zoo, those kind of travel. Like, I think us going on field trips and traveling with our friends, that was definitely like the first experience I've had. And I do want to ask everyone as my last question before we close this episode out is some of us had more luxury traveling and some of us really didn't. We were more limited based on maybe budget or our family and status and stuff like that. How does that affect you now as an adult? Are you adventurous? Are you more likely to travel by yourself? Are you itching to travel if you haven't traveled in a certain amount of time? Like, how do you feel? What is your stance about traveling now? And I'll start with Kat.
I think definitely it affected like my outlook in life, because I remember, apart from just school, especially because my parents, like all of us, pretty much, our parents moved overseas and whatnot. My parents really made sure that they compensated for their absence, right? And one of those things was to really send us home money to be able to, for us to do things that we want to do. And one of those things is traveling. And so I remember my parents would actually spend for our family, like at home, to travel. So I remember we always had like this big family trips. We would go to Palawan, we would go to Cebu, we would go to Manila, and it's just an extended family too. It wasn't just me. So it would be me with, I don't know, like 10 others from our extended family. So just looking back at those, I'm just realizing how much I love to travel, but also how much I love to travel in groups because of the fact that I did a lot of family traveling growing up. So yeah, that definitely affected. And also just my outlook. Like, I think that I'm so much more adventurous and I'm always like down to try anything because of the fact that like I traveled a lot when I was a kid.
Cool. What about you, Meg? I know Meg here is one of those she's had one of those adventures where she actually lived in another country besides the country she was born in. So tell us, Meg, what is your outlook in traveling and all that stuff now? I mean, of course, not thinking about COVID at all, just traveling.
I've traveled by myself. I love traveling. And I've also traveled with friends. I prefer traveling solo by myself. I've been to a couple cities in Europe, and I don't know, I like exploring places on my own schedule and with my own itinerary and meeting new people. And it's fun traveling with friends, but I like to explore on my own and have like I don't know, contemplative, reflective time for myself, and just experiencing the travel differently from my own perspective. And I intend to continue traveling solo more in the future.
Yes, especially, once it's more safe for us to do so. So I know Joy here is also another adventurer. So tell us about your outlook and your perspective on traveling.
Yeah, I guess like Kat, it made me more adventurous. And also like Meg, I'm more of like, I started solo traveling, and at a young age, I gained independence at such a young age. I rode the jeepney by myself at age 9, and I rode all this public transportation by myself without any fear. So I think that made me more adventurous growing up. And now that I was in the States since when I first started working, and it gave me the ability to travel. So I went to Europe at age 25. I visited 14 countries in 2 weeks by myself, alone, without any Facebook, no maps. It was all paper, no cell phone. It was just a tiny cell phone. So I think growing up, having to navigate and getting lost kind of made my mindset or my adventurous spirit triggered me to be more just to know how to get around places if I get lost. So that I think that made me prepare for my traveling spirit now that in my adult years. But now I've kind of lied low, but that's how it was for me.
Thanks for sharing. And Pao, I would ask you the same question, but I'm going to add a different idea into it because you have, 2 kids. And how old is Icy now?
9.
9. You have a 9-year-old boy. I mean, I want to know, we want to know what your outlook is on traveling, but I also want to know how you feel about your kids, navigating public transportation by themselves.
Traveling for me, when I was young, it was a privilege for us because my dad works at Negros Navigation. So every time we go to different town or different, like example from Bacolod to Manila, Bacolod to Cebu, Bacolod to Iloilo, it's free because of him. We also we celebrate also New Year if we want to celebrate it. We celebrate it in the middle of the sea. So those are my privileges when I was young. We would always travel. It's because of my dad, because we don't have to spend a lot of money with transportation. But with my children right now, with my kids, I want them to experience it as what I've experienced before. Even though it's not like a long travel, like from one country to another, just from one town to another town, so that they can explore also and they can see different things, not only just in one place. And also the only travels right now that I've took them is mostly the Philippines. Every year, there are times that we would go twice a year. There are instances, because I want them to see our culture, to see what life is in the Philippines. So most of our travels, because they're still young, it's mostly in the Philippines. So that's about it for my children. And eventually, when they grow older, I want them, like they're more independent already. We can go to other places. That's about it for me. When it comes to travel.
Well, thank you. And for me, when I was younger, we went to places when we could, like I mentioned, went to Manila Zoo. We went to Iloilo because my grandma was there, and my dad would come home only for a month every year, and that's usually around Christmas time. And he would, we would try to go places, like I've been to Baguio City, so that was like the first time where I felt cold, and I'm like, wow, that's cool, it's cold in Baguio, and we're in the Philippines. So there's I think there's something to it that when our parents expose us even just a little bit of traveling, and then also when we push ourselves, when we push our limits, or when we experience those moments when we didn't know that we could do it, but we did it anyway, as far as traveling, I think that helps a lot of us who are here who don't mind getting lost, because we've been lost many times before, don't mind finding our way around a new town, because we've done that plenty of times too in our own town. And so I think that has really given us motivation to explore the world. And now more than ever, besides, the issue of COVID, traveling has become more accessible, with even local transportation. Now we have Uber, we have all these things that are available to us here in the States. And now in the Philippines, they also have an Uber called Grab. And so it's more available for a lot of people to go to different places. And I think that it's a wonderful thing, whether you were limited as a child to with traveling, or you had parents that always took you traveling. I think that from hearing everyone's stories and everyone's experience, I think it has played a role in the choices you make now of how much adventure you're open to, right? And so I want to ask one funky question before we end this. And I want to know everyone's answer, and you can all shout it out. It doesn't matter that we're going to say it all at the same time on a virtual meeting. Yeah, I'll say 3, 2, 1 and see what the answer is. So, who do you think out of all of us is most likely going to go skinny dipping? So, everyone on 3, say your answer. 1, 2, 3.
Sweetie.
Wait, what? That didn't work out quite as
So
well.
I said Sweeney. Pao said Cat. I said me. Meg, what was your answer? What's your answer, Sween?
I said cat too.
And I own up to it. Yes, I will go skinny dipping.
Yeah, I think I think I would too, but I say cat first because I think that after cat does it, I'll do it too. So you're both right. So thank you guys for listening to All Abroad podcast.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching another episode of All Abroad Podcast. If you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcast platforms, please don't forget to rate us and subscribe. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And we will see you next time.